All right, welcome to the Higher Self Wellness Podcast. My name's Alec, and thanks for tuning in. If you're new to the show, then welcome. And if you are returning, welcome back. Either way, big hug to you and a lot of gratitude just for taking the time to spend it here with me. So I hope your day is going well. I hope your week is going well, whichever day of the week you find yourself listening to this. And I just wanted to share that if you'd like to sign up for the newsletter, you can do so on the website www.higherself.yoga. And in that newsletter, I just share like personal insights, newer articles that I write, new podcast episodes, and just things that I find interesting and that I feel are worth sharing. So you can sign up for that over at the website. And if you find this podcast valuable, insightful, agitating, if it moves you in any way, leave a review. Leave a review on iTunes or wherever you are listening to this, and give it your heartfelt rating. A lot of gratitude for taking the time to do that. It really only takes a few seconds, less than a minute or so. And again, just thanks for taking the time to spend it here. So in today's beautiful conversation, I'm speaking with a good friend of mine, Mr. Niko, the modern gypsy. And we talk about travel. We talk about the gifts of travel. We talk about the challenges of travel, and just the process of trusting yourself, and how, at the very essence of it all, we're wild animals and we are all just citizens of this world, and how these boundaries are imaginary lines that we create that basically just separate us from each other. And we get into the freedom of tapping into these rhythms like the wind and the water, and just living on the land basically, or living on the water, and just like how over time it can transform your mind and your overall perspective for what you think you really need just to live a happy life. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, and here we go.
So, the minimalistic lifestyle of living on a sailboat and having that sort of, as I see it, it's kind of like a sense of you've never left traveling or being on vacation. I spent some years abroad, as we'll talk about, but the life back on the boat was kind of like I've got 1 foot in and out the door. I'm not actually traveling, but I haven't quite landed immediately on land where I'm sort of pegged into society. So every day coming home is a sense of adventure. The house moves and it rocks, and if I crank the engine over and throw up the sails, like, I'm out of there. I can do whatever I want when I want. So the lifestyle of the little sailor it's a rad one, and it's enriching, and it's fun, and it's sensible. It's not to be a creature of consumption. The boating world doesn't really bode well with you, because there's no space for it, and if you think that you want and need all those things, you'll quickly learn while living in there that it's just not working out, because you're essentially going to be stuck in your own hole, and you got to start throwing shit out the boat and giving stuff away and saying it off to Goodwill. It's kind of like it sort of tells you the essentials. What is the most effective or efficient means of achieving, like, say, 2 or 3 purposes for one item. And that's great. And it was a nice thing, I suppose, for me to move into, from being a little vagabond gypsy wanderlust about the globe, is that I went from basically putting my entire life in a school backpack, and I left and I went here where I am now in Mexico, and that kind of started that number off. And then I went home for a summer, then came back on right directly to the same place that I'm sitting right now, but 10 feet to the right in that room. And all I had was a couple boards and a backpack. And that was, you know, months of surfing here. And then I went and headed south. I went to Guatemala and did a homestay, studied with the family, talked so much Spanish that I didn't even know that I knew, up to the point of like getting headaches, you know, because it was such a heavy transition of speaking English and then really having to fight just to say, you know, what are we having for dinner tonight or something, or, you know, what I went and did 5 minutes ago, you know. And, you know, the journey continued there. My boards went right along with me, and I'd hide them under the bed. And on the weekends, I'd scamp off and go head out to the beach, the nearest beach I could find, and stumble into the two top surfers of Guatemala at one random beach, and they never talked to each other, you know. It was a funny experience, and I went and surfed with them both, and they're both cool guys, but they were sort of like, this is my peak and this is his peak, and we don't ever surf together. And that's how it was, you know. So yeah, the Guatemala world went and carried on, and it was that as time continued, it's sort of what really happened as a whole for myself personally was I went from being a surf addict to slowly being molded into a backpacker, and then a cultured human, and then someone who more or less had at least a couple footprints around the globe to understand what the big picture was. And I think it was something that I'd been looking for all along. I just didn't know how I was going to find it or when I would. I just knew that it was going to happen. And that was kind of the start of my journey. Was when I left home. It was, you know, perhaps a bit selfish, but it was a dream, you know, something that, you know, I think that we share. And that, you know, at the time, I think we all kind of hoped to more or less do together. But, you know, everyone's got their own, you know, webs in life and where things take you. And for me, it was that point in time. And that's when I sort of, you know, cut strings and went. That's cool. Yeah, it was an epic journey to say the least. And even paired with like writing the book right now, I'm sort of reliving the exact things that we're talking about. So my time through Australia and New Zealand is like, I just watched a documentary in my brain as I went through meticulously covering so much of what occurred. And it had me like, you know, wanting to, you know, message certain people or phone somebody up or say, hey, and check in on them, just because there was like so much dialogue that I went through in my head that just brought back so much of the magic that happens when, you know, you're traveling and you're off in, you know, unknown places, and, you know, every day, everything that you do it's fresh and, you know, without restriction or tie down, you know, you just, your goal is, you know, when do I eat? That's it. Yeah. You know, am I going to go see that waterfall? Are we going to go and check out, you know, this rad hike over this way, or, you know, go see these canyons or the flipping kangaroos, you know? It was, whatever you hope to ever get into, you just kind of went with it and you took it in stride.
That's cool. So like about your boat, I don't remember if I asked you this beforehand, but like, did you have any experience like sailing or anything like that before you got the boat? Or was it just based on like, this is more economical?
Precisely.
Nice.
And it was, and some things in life, it's kind of like, you know, it really depends upon the person, but even amongst the boating world, there's a really rad community that exists amongst sailors where it's not like, say, surfing, where people kind of tend to, it's your own craft and your own waves, and you've got your little group of friends, but the random person next to you doesn't want to teach you how to, you know, pig dog. They're not interested in that. It's like, figure it out for yourself, dude, or ask your bros or read a magazine. In the sailing world, thankfully, it's the opposite. The moment that you get a boat, they immediately want to know what kind of boat you picked up. Can they see the interior? Well, is it inboard or outboard engine, diesel, gas? What kind of sails do you have? What's your boat? They want to know all the specs of the boat, and then once all that kind of gets chatted through, they get into, have you taken it out? Well, can you sail? Or you can't? Oh, well, if you like, just hit me up anytime and we'll go out and say, I'd love to sail. We'll grab some people and pull them all together, let's get the maiden voyage in, they're really open to educating you about everything and anything, and that's really kind of a cool thing about sailing is if your heart's in it or you want to learn it, all you have to do is have that little string of curiosity and be a sponge and have an open mind, and then you're right into it. So back to your question, I didn't know freaking Peter from Paul when I started. It was just that's a boat, it floats, there's an engine, I can turn it on, it's got a freaking helm, done, or a tiller. And I scooped it blind, as did a friend of mine, Evan, that I'd met traveling in New Zealand. And he's from California, and he picked up a boat, and we both bought them within a month of each other. I'd picked up mine first, and it was just completely blind walking into it. But like I said, the neighbors kind of come together, and everyone's curious, and if you want to go sail, they freaking want to go sail. And you take the boat out and you learn. And each time we went out was just, it was a training session for me, and for them it was fun, because I would say every time that we went out, especially for probably the first dozen sails, we had one oh shit moment. Something happened unexpected that we had to recalculate, adjust, and I guess, render correct and then carry on. And then after that, we started having sails where everything was just cherry the whole way through. Nothing funny happened, and we just, had a great sail, and you'd come in kind of feeling high from the whole experience, and we'd go off and, get dinner or something or grab a couple drinks, and it's really cool.
That's cool.
There's
to me, it seems like it's just like a really good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's just something really nice about riding another form of energy. Surfing is the waves, sailboats is the wind. When the engine cuts off, you're just using what nature's given you to get around. And that's I think that's where the high comes from, is that sense of freedom, And while that's happening and you're under sail, there's that inner sense of being, of just full tranquility. And you just sit back and let nature take you.
Gosh. Yeah, it's so cool. Mm-hmm. It's the more research I've been doing on it lately, the more interested I'm becoming in it, because it's like just this really strong, tight-knit community that's just very open to share the experience that they've had and like the joy that they've had along just tapping into, it's essentially these rhythms of the planet that we're living on, and it's the wind and it's the water, and you're just tapping into the energy and using that to travel, right? It's like the ultimate form of travel, because you can go so far. And most of the planet is covered with water, and there's going to be wind going around the whole earth. And it's like, it just seems like such wild terrain to where there can be so much of like an inner exploration based on the whole exploration of the outer world. And I'm sure you've had some interesting experiences just living on your boat and in the kind of solitude and just being out there on the water of like, wow, this is like just feeling alive and feeling connected and like in tune. And very similar to that of surfing, right? Like we've had those experiences of a lot of like even shared experiences being out there together and just like, dude, are you kidding me? Like everything is just so on point right now and such in flow that it's just like you reach this ecstatic state of like joy and happiness, and it's badass.
One of the buddies back home, Noah, who's real, he took into sailing like a surf grom. He just freaked out, and like he'd been sailing 4 to 6 months before us, but was also fresh, and he experiences a lot, the very thing you're mentioning, because he's done a couple trips to Kauai, monosail, just by himself. And he used to send me photos or videos off and on of, he called it ghost ship, but he had everything trimmed perfect. and then he basically is up at the bow and the ship's steering itself, and he's doing absolutely nothing but kicking back for maybe half hour, 45 minutes, not doing a damn thing, and just loving it, because basically he'd sort of got into that tune, that rhythm that you're speaking of. And, after that, it just took care of himself. And then, more with the sailing world, when you, of course, become more proficient in it, he's got like a wind vane and stuff out the back that you can actually set up for sort of autopilot. And then the boat really sails itself. And then you're just more or less just, riding along in nature's trade winds, and the horizon's your limit and beyond, actually, like you said, it really is. And I had the same thoughts too when I started tallying in what sailing was and then mirroring it with traveling. I was like, oh my gosh, it was like a light bulb moment. I'm like, you could sail the whole world and travel indefinitely whenever you want, and you don't really have to use much fuel. Is there a lot that goes into planning those trips? Oh, hell yes, but it's doable. And if you get that all right, and you time the seasons and when the trades are kicking, make sure you're not trying to set off during any of the monsoon or the hurricane seasons. Finding those in between windows, you've got, for example, from Hawaii, you could almost directly sail to Tahiti, just downwind, set your coordinate and just right on into it. And then from there, you'll pass through, like Papua New Guinea and all the other little, islands that are amongst and out there, Fiji. And if you continue on past that, you're eventually going to run into Australia. It all just kind of keeps going. And then, you can you can map the open ocean currents and which way that they cater to. And, an example would be going up to California or Washington or Alaska or something. You wouldn't necessarily sail to Mexico directly and go north. You actually kind of swing out and then head up. And that's because you're riding these deep water open ocean currents that are going to help you and sort of pull you along the way. And then, of course, that's where the trade winds are pulling to. And that'll kind of shoot you up in a trough. So, yeah, man, the life of a sailor, a good sailor, it's not an easy one, but it's a really rewarding one. And there's just a lot of neat connection that one, I guess, can have within themselves and within the ship or the boat, as well as nature in general. It's a cool craft. It is certainly, the essence of it is right up there with the purity that we can get from surfing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a neat one.
That's really cool. Yeah, like, oh man, it's really calling to me right now just to learn more about it as I'm watching these boats kind of cruise by out here on the water, because there's a lot of nice wind today. And oh man, I could only imagine yeah, it's great. So you're in Mexico right now. I believe that's like some birds I hear chirping in the background, right? I hear them occasionally.
They're faint, but I guess that
I think the mic is really good at picking them up.
Pretty good.
I think the high pitch.
I can hardly hear them, but they are around. They're these little sparrows that kind of come and set on the wire just up ahead. Yeah,
that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So simply living, man. It's living without all the bells and whistles and like really just stripping down. And minimizing, spending money excessively on things that you don't need.
Yeah,
I know that was kind of a natural thing just growing up, and like you've been self-sufficient for a long time, going into the Navy and then coming out, and then like all the traveling that we've done.
Right.
So like just traveling in general, I guess, like what's the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
It'd be a tough one to calculate, but I think the toughest one would be, I couldn't give you a single. I could give you a handful of great ones. How's that sound?
Perfect.
So lessons learned while traveling. I guess the things that I came across that were brought back with me. One of the prime top ones is probably the fact that we're all humans and we're all people, and it doesn't matter where you come from or what you do or your lineage or your nationality or skin color or education level, is that we're all just people, and when you set and you can kick back in another country and have the same sort of laughs that you would back at your own hometown, and you're with a whole bunch of strangers, you realize that it isn't such an unreachable or untappable or something that you can't actually adapt to or become a chameleon towards. It's the same thing we're doing now is likely happening in a million places all over the world. So that was a big hitter for me when I kind of just sat there and thought, wow, the bits where I felt maybe a bit kind of recoiled, like I don't know how I'm going to fit into this, core group of humans. And then all of a sudden realizing that the whole concern is actually, just poof, it's not even an issue. And that was magical. It was really neat to see that, simply put, people are people, humans are humans. We're all just living our lives. And when you're out traveling, that kind of even pulls the strings in a little more because you've got other travelers' minds with you. So the things that we can resonate with talking about are also very much real amongst them. So to sit there and discuss your dreams of wanting to go somewhere and see some far distant lands or these, remote interiors or something, isn't such a conversation that you might have to try and have at home, like maybe with a stranger or a family member, certainly with the friends. But when you're out there, it's almost like you don't have to convince them how cool it is. They're just like, oh my gosh, like I've been waiting to do the same thing for 4 years. Yeah, let's go, So yeah, some big heavy hitters there. The other ones, I just finished writing about this one last week, put a bit of time into it. And then I referenced something from that Alexander Supertramp, Into the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a, when he's doing his little narrative there, he mentions, and I'm not going to get it verbatim, but the gist of the lines that he mentions says that the best of times that he'd had were those when he was penniless. And that made sense, but I didn't actually digest it until it happened to me. And a few times while I was traveling, and those are scary moments, is when, the funds are getting low and you're not sure where your next out's going to be, or are you going to have to use those credit cards, or are they maxed out? I don't know. That's all, different based upon the person, or maybe you don't want to get below a certain threshold of money in your bank, and you do. For me, it happened a few times where I was down to, less than $100. And then one time I was down to about $10 and then $5, like completely flipping broke. And when it got to that really, really low point, of basically going through a Rolodex of emotion from everything's cool and great, and then slowly sinking in to this sort of freak out, anxiety ridden, mildly depressed, float or sink kind of situation. And then there's something weird that happens in that last corner of going from comfort to worry to bliss. There's a bliss that happens when you're broke. And when you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, you don't know how you're going to pay for your next week's backpacker's rent. You don't know where money will ever even potentially come from. You're essentially at the bare bones bottom, and the only thing that you've got is just your human, And when that happens, there's magic within there. And it occurred not just for me, but to 2 other friends as well that were on that same life cycle. And in the end, it all came through and worked out. you know, like something came along, and I don't know what I can talk about on this podcast, or you can edit it if you like it, but
It's
or if you
open.
wish to cut it out. Okay. The thing that saved me was my own favorites ever since I tried psychedelics, and it was psilocybin mushrooms. And we were dead broke, and we're not going to make it, and had no flipping money, and we put the last $5 that Evan had in gas in his beat down car that didn't have second gear. And
Oh man.
I had about $10, so I gave him a few bucks in gas, and we were just like, you know what, this is it. Like, this is the freaking Hail Mary to the end zone, and if someone catches it, we're good, and if nothing happens, then, you know, call the family and plane ticket home kind of thing, you know. And so we went out and we hunted for these things, and we came back broke. Nothing. There was nothing there. And we were just like, oh God, you know, like, but don't lose hope, because we're still, like I said, we're on that broke high where we're like, you know what, like, no setback can really tear us down, because we've already hit rock bottom. You know, what's the worst you can do to me? We're already down here. So with our feet on those stones, we went out the next day and shot up to a different place, and it was at Cornet Peak in Queenstown. And when we got up there, you know, uncertain, but what have you, and had little plastic bags in our pockets for the hopeful I may find something. And, and with Evan, Livia, and myself, we set out at this mountain edge, fingers crossed. And as we're starting to climb, Livia and her little German girl, and her accent, it's just like, oh, guys, you know, I think I found something, you know. And we're like, wait, what? And we look back, and she's coming running up to us with like 3 little mushrooms in her hand. And we're looking at them, and then like I take my phone and I'm looking at the picture, and I'm looking at those, and they're like, you know, mirror picture perfect of each other. And they were sticky on the top, and they had that little nipple, a little elf hat, and it was the bee's knees when we saw that. It was just like, you know. And then at that moment, we're like, okay, now that we found 3, we know what we're looking for. Let's just see if we can find them. And we kind of settled ourselves down like near ground level where, you know, the mushrooms live. And we look up, and up the hill, all we can see amongst the low grass is just hundreds of them. Hundreds upon hundreds, all the way up the slope. And we're like jaw drop, like, I couldn't pick up quick enough, dude. And we spent the next, you know, several hours just combing through the whole hillside, you know, and doing the little flick thing and making sure that they rejuvenate. And like, you know, we picked our way up to the top of one ledge and off to the next. And, you know, when it was all said and done, after a couple trips, going to and from that very occasion is essentially what sustained us, because we took those home, and we gave like almost 20 trips away to a whole stack of backpackers, saying, here, try them out. If you like them, great, we got them. And we did this massive group trip on mushrooms with the backpackers, and went to the botanical gardens and hung out for the afternoon. And then after that, you know, we had a handful of buyers, and then they started picking up a couple, and we went out and made I chopped them up real fine into powder form and made them into little chocolates, just dark chocolate brownie or mushroom batches. And, you know, we spruced them up that way, and eventually put little coffee beans in them to make them taste better, and like, or coffee ground. And from that point on, those little things were like our little chocolate golden coins, and $20 a pop for them, because you could sell the mushrooms for $20 a cap, and 20 was a trip. Every 20 that went down was like, you know, for somebody who only had $5 to their name or nothing at all, $20 was 4 times what I had 2 days ago, you know. So that little 20 here, that 20 there, and we were able to, you know, get back to eating a little bit more sensibly and actually have some fun, and then, you know, maybe occasionally go out on the night on the town and have a drink or two. And that the thousands that we found eventually coaxed Evan long enough to find work out in Takaoka doing some carpentry work. And then myself, it got me through until I sold my Subaru and got my job at NZ Ski working for Remarkables.
Wow.
and Livia ended up getting woofing. So like it stretched us just long enough, and it kept us in that sort of like, survival mindset, but it was great. It wasn't scary or depressing. And, when it all closed out, like everything worked cherry. No one had to go home. And the name of these caps, I love it, are called Liberty caps. Yeah. And it really was a freaking just such a freedom, that we came across them, that they found us, that we found them, and that, our travels were to continue. And it was just a different chapter for us.
That's cool.
Really cool. So
Yeah.
going broke is a painful one, but when you go all the way broke, there's magic at the bottom of that one. So don't run from it.
Yeah. It's like this trust. You like, you hit rock bottom and you trusted that, like, all right, let's get out into nature and see what there is. And just that trust in nature and being able to be supported by, the environment around you and to be able to help others. And
exactly.
It pulled you through.
It became a joke. We were like, the mountain will provide kind of thing is how the comedy went with us. And we weren't, and it was, in my opinion, I felt that we were giving away something good too. For anyone who enjoys psychedelics, a mushroom experience is usually a positive experience. It's transformative. It's evaluative within yourself. It can get rid of a lot of inner anxieties and such. So the whole thing we were doing, even though it was with the substance, wasn't like we were selling booze,
Yeah. There are opportunities, I feel like.
It was like a gift, it was a connection. And usually amongst, I think, the groups that appreciate them from that level, understand that when that token is given, that it's more than just $20 worth of mushrooms, There was, something deeper that came with it, something more soulful, more spiritual.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to reflect and refine and process like things that you're going through and things that are happening. And also it's like a communal thing as well in that type of setting, which is great, because it's like we're all out here and we're all coming together with this intention to just enjoy life and to enjoy this deeper connection and, enjoy the botanical gardens and connect with nature. It's way different than just, going out to the club or just, it's way different. The setting is very powerful. And
right.
I think in the group setting is awesome with like-minded people with similar intention. That's cool. So you have those two lessons so far. You were about to tell one more?
Sure. Let's grab another one for you.
If you got it.
And do a quick little memory bank search. Those are the heavy hitters, I know for sure.
Nice.
I think just becoming more of and I love this expression, and another friend had handed me off to this. It's also going to end up being in the book. But, the quick story behind it is, a friend was asked, where are you from another traveler. And, we'd all given our little quick answers of, I'm from, England, off in London, or I'm from, South Africa and Durban. We all spouted off our bits, and then he kind of paused, and I think he'd actually written a book himself. It wasn't in reference to anything philosophical, but I think he enjoyed to kind of hold the moment. And he says, I'm going to answer with an answer that my friend gave. And so he pauses and he says, in reference to in lieu of your question of where am I from, he says, I'm really from none of the places that anyone has mentioned or spoken of. Was I born in London, England? Yes. He says, but, he says, I like to call myself more or less a citizen, but not necessarily of a country, but a citizen of the world. And that statement there was, his way of saying that borders aren't really the grandest things to sit there and evaluate and to place people from. Oh, you're from Brazil, or you're from Chile, or you're all an American, oh, you're from, Australia, New Zealand, wherever. he sort of lifted the biases that could become attached to stigmas of society, and said, I'm not from anywhere. I'm a citizen of the world, you know, an all-encompassing answer that basically says that we're all kind of back to the first comment, that we're all people and we're all humans. And I really dug that one when he spelt it. I thought it was just, you know, poetic justice right there. It was good. And it's a true thing, and it's something that I think I try and carry with me. There's a lot of culture, you know, I think that's something that or being cultured, you know, that comes with when you travel, is how you interact in a world that's not your own. There's the arrogance that can come with some folks that aren't really, are fresh or just don't know, or maybe they have a blockade up and that's just how they go, like maybe a tourist as opposed to a traveler, you know. Not saying that all tourists are arrogant or whatever, but you know, like there's kind of that element when you're not really sure how to behave or have proper manners as you travel, and when you travel and with and amongst people, whether it's other travelers or it's the local inhabitants of the land. But that sense of being cultured was another milestone for me, in understanding being more accommodating or more reverent, to not be so bold when you venture into a new place, to sort of kind of take a step back and, you know, have a breather and kind of, you know, feel the space that you're within instead of bringing you directly upon it. You know, it's respect, really. You know, if you can learn the language or bits and pieces of the words from the places that you're going to, that's like a whole nother world of experiencing that land that you went to. You know, I find that being in any Latin or any Spanish speaking country, my experiences now are much different than before when I couldn't speak any other language. You know, you kind of tend to, you'll get farther into, or you'll get deeper into that seed that is their culture if you're able to connect with them in a more personal way. You know, there's a lot of language barrier that kind of breaks down, and then they can communicate in a fashion that they can really kind of get to know you a bit more, and then they'll start opening up and they'll start to show you all those little secrets that are everywhere and kind of tell you these little hidden nooks and these places and these, you know, little lands and hidden surf spots or something, you know, like all that stuff starts to kind of come to fruition when you have that cultured person or personality or that trait or that sense of being. Yeah, how's that for the final one?
No, that's great. And it's, man, like borders are just imaginary lines that, you know, people have created to distance themselves and to seclude themselves and to, I don't know, it's just so weird to me. And like we're all just animals, right? Just like roaming around the world trying to make sense of everything. But people get so caught up in all these different beliefs and constructs of reality that we just create these not only personal boundaries, but then these, you know, imaginary lines that are separating people to these different layers and preventing a lot of connection. But like we thrive on connection, and it's really cool to hear that, because like through all your travels, you've noticed like, oh yeah, the more I can connect and the more I can especially connect and relate with the local people by even learning their local language and being able to communicate with them, like it's just a more rich experience. And it's just being authentic, right? It's like you can connect with these people and become more authentic, and it humbles yourself. It's like, well, I only know a few words, but you know, I'm doing my best.
Exactly. They can see that you're trying, and like just the effort alone, you know, speaks multitudes.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, just coming back to like connecting to nature and roaming this planet. It's something that is Like there's a lot of people out there doing it, and it's awesome. And it's especially awesome, I feel like, to connect with those people who have had really rich experiences while traveling. But there's a lot of people who are scared of it as well. And, it's, I don't want to push people to do something they're not ready to do, but for those who are ready to travel and to really push their own boundaries, there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for insight and like inspiration and connection to get out there and
Yeah.
see new things and to go new places and to try new things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of personal growth that happens along, the road as you go. As you're, especially if you kind of do like a solo travel for a bit, because you're going to slowly become the more pure version of yourself, because there isn't any sort of at-home comforts that sort of define you. Perhaps your character was actually traits that were a grip of your network of friends, and then when you go off and travel, you start to realize that a handful of them fall off, and they're not actually really something deep within inside you. It was just something that was a reciprocation between networks of friends. And that sort of starts generating that jumping through the hoops, or the building blocks for discovering a more deeper sense of yourself. And it's, yeah, if someone's, say they're in a crossroads and they're not ready to start their career, or not ready for starting college, or they're fresh out of high school and they're just the world's their oyster, and they just want to see far and distant lands and something completely different than what they've ever known before. Those bits are just it's funny, like sometimes you think that you can go confined within your own hometown and your own little space where you live, or you grew up, or where you temporarily reside, and you forget that there's just this whole earth out there to go and explore and to see, and you might end up spending 30 years of it, or 20, or your whole lifetime within your own country, or within your own state, your own town, and never actually having gotten to go out and truly experience what else is out there. I mean, like, to me, I guess it varies upon the person, but to think that, if I lived a full life and I never actually saw another continent, it's just baffling. And it's like, how could I spend, 80, 100 years alive and never actually even see what's on the other side of the globe?
Mm-hmm.
And it almost seems like, to me, it would be like a slap on the wrist, like a shame on you, you didn't really give your gift of self off to the world, and nor did you go off to go and seek out that from somebody else, there's, whether it's to go and see the other cultures, or the other climates, or locations, or continents, or bits of nature, or the wonders of the world, whatever it is, from several different layers, there's really just so much to see. I mean, maybe you just want to go to Russia and do the Trans-Siberian train, across, just to experience that, and that's great and cool. Like, hey, go ahead, go get it, live that one through, see it out. I'll bet you if you go and do that one, all of a sudden you're going to think, maybe I'll go down to Germany next time. Let's go check out Norway. I want to see the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis, I always kind of thought it'd be cool to just, sit in a pub in Ireland, and it starts getting the little cogs going. Once you've, someone's giving you a little peek around the corner of what could be, and you see it, and that little bit of anxiety kind of dissipates of, like, the unknown. You're just like, it's like starting a new job, or just taking that next leap into, like, a different career choice, like all the fear of the unknown kind of dissipates, and you're like, why did I freak myself out about this thing the whole time? It was just as simple as, do I have some funds to buy a ticket and to fly, or a boat to sail, or drive across a border and go out and see this place that's really drawn my curiosity, And I think after that, it's kind of like, you know, just shuffling a deck of cards, like you're in, you know, you're hooked. It's like getting tattoos or something, you know, like once you've got one, it's going to keep carrying on. And, yeah, you know, it's you know, the life of a wanderlust, you know, it's a new thing.
Curiosity, that's something I talk about a lot because it invites a sense of playfulness and like childlike viewing of something. And I mean, the more curiosity we can bring into life, the more open we become to learning and experiencing and also sharing. And like a lot of the times going on these travels, it's not only about what you're experiencing, but it's also about what you're offering to the people that you interact with along your travels, because, you know, you're the other half of their experience. And if you can offer of something of like genuine, you know, presence and interaction, then you're enriching somebody else's life as well as gaining new insights and experiencing new places and learning new whatever and experiencing new food. And oh man, there's just so much going on with it. And yeah,
Right.
I love it.
Yeah, and that's one I haven't even tapped on, is like all the cuisine, you know, that alone could have you going around the world for decades, you know, like trying, like, because that's one of the more exciting things. You got to figure, like, your nose is one of the strongest senses that you have, you know, like it can immediately like zap you back to childhood if you smell something like that triggers that memory. And then so much of our sense of taste in the culinary world comes from our sense of smell. So, you know, go ahead and fire that through your taste buds, you know, go off to India and then go down to Peru and then head over to Australia and then come on up to, you know, Sweden. You know, those freaking polarities and those differences and herbs and spices and seasonings and all that stuff is, you know, fan-flippin-tastic, you know. Like we had all that good stuff often, of course, through like the Mexico and then the Central Americas, but even off in Indonesia, you know, with the cuisine there, the mee goreng and the nasi goreng, you know, all those eats. That's well, and your grandmother as well. I guess you got a bit of that growing up as a kid too. But yeah, the food is that's a big hitter when you're out, definitely.
Yeah, I love it. And it's a great way to build community, you know, and that's what it's all about, like gathering and sharing and eating and nourishing. It's like this community, you know, meals are sometimes more nourishing than the food itself. And it's not always about what the food is, but like the setting and the set again, it's like it comes back down to just connecting with others and connecting to where you are in the moment. I love it.
Yeah,
so what's next on your plate? You're in Mexico for another month or so? A little
Yeah,
more.
just little over a month. I'll be leaving here, I think, on the 3rd of August. So maybe 5 weeks or so. And the closure of that will be my, you know, am married. So there's going to be a new wedding in the family, and I guess gaining a couple more family members. And then it's going to be back to my little island in Hawaii. So I'll just be jumping back on the, you know, back into society a bit, I guess, but one foot out the door on the boat, and, you know, I'll be carrying on. But there's always travels running through my head and in the future. And, you know, once I finish up some more, you know, my apprenticeship studies, that's going to, again, bring, you know, life back on the road. So, with hopes being South America and or like a solid Euro travel and spend 6 months or a year or something. But as soon as I get the license for electrician, then I've got, you know, a skill set I can take with me, and then I've got a whole world I can gallivant around as much as I want. So, you know, the bank account's already going that way, and that's really kind of one important thing before you go, is just to have some funds ready, unless you're doing working holiday visas, which makes it a lot easier. But for me, I'll just be doing tourist visas throughout. Yeah, but I mean, I still try and jump out of the country at least, you know, once a year, twice if I can. And Yeah, I'd say every 4 to 6 months I start getting itchy. That's pretty consistent in my life. I'm kind of like just starting to get that cabin fever, and I've got to see something new. And I mean, I'm in, a tropical island, but it's not so much like that I'm looking for, the exact setting that I enjoy just to be, comfortable within myself, instead of like the polarity for me is the cold. I don't do well with that. So, but even having that placement, I enjoy it there, but it's not enough to where it's going to satiate my desire to not travel. I just don't see it happening. I haven't felt it happen. I don't think it will happen. I think a traveler's heart kind of stays with you. It's kind of within your sense of being. And, the feet are always ready to kind of point to new horizons.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Never stop moving, never stop learning, never stop traveling. It's man, I love it. Well, cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
So you're finishing up the book now, and I guess if people want to follow your goals and anything like that, and they connect with you.
Sure. Yeah. You're kind of scratching there a little bit with the breakups. I didn't catch it all, but I heard you say something about a means of connecting.
Yeah, if people are interested in learning more about your travels and stuff like that, or just maybe
sure. I mean, if there's any curiosities and whatnot, like there's always, my favorite platform is Instagram. So modern_gypsy_, and that's for Niko Crouch. And then if you had questions about travels, or, kind of wondering where, how to get started, or a good place to get your feet wet, you can certainly hit me up and drop me a line through my email. So ncrouch08@gmail.com, and that's Crouch, CROUCH.
Sweet, man.
Yeah, if you've got that sort of burning desire to kind of get out and see something, I'm a good set of ears to kind of sit back and listen to it.
Nice. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Well, awesome, dude.
Thanks, Grant.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to share all that, and a lot of wisdom there.
Absolutely. Well, I'm happy to share it, man. It's I think a gift that it'd be a shame to not kind of give back. So, thanks for spending the time with me. I appreciate it. And it's great hearing from you, buddy.
Yeah, of course.
As always, dude, until the next time.
All right.
All right, legend. Well, good chats, bro.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation I had with Nick, and it's just great to connect with longtime friends who, your paths cross every once in a while, but whenever they do cross, you can just pick back up to right where you left off. So I find a lot of value in these friendships and connections. And if you're interested in beginning to travel, feel free to connect with Nick or myself. And most importantly, just thanks for taking the time to tune in. And if you feel like showing some gratitude back, you can leave a review from wherever you're listening to this. You can head on over to the homepage, www.higherself.yoga, and sign up for the newsletter. But most importantly, I hope you have a great day. So take care. Much love to you.